In the United States, more than 1 million children experience parental divorce each year. Nearly 40% of the current generation of children will experience the divorce of their parents before they are 18 years old. Of those children, it is thought that more than 25% experience mental health and/or adjustment problems at twice the rate of their peers with intact families, and that increased risk often persists into adulthood.
Research has shown that children of divorce are at high risk for depression, anxiety, behavior problems, and substance abuse. Children often suffer emotional scars that last a lifetime and have trouble with their own intimate relationships as adults. But studies have also shown that effective interventions can mitigate those outcomes.
Younger kids tend to become a little more dependent. In other words, they might be, especially really young kids might be a little clingier, might need more attention, because they're really noticing the separation. They feel like maybe they've lost this parent or that parent, depending on who they're with. So they might be more clingy, or maybe regress a little in their development, depending on how young they are. And then older kids, especially when you get to 10, 12, teenage years, they're already starting to become more independent from their parents, and that may accelerate. So they may separate more from their parents, be more in tune with their friends and peers, and start that separation process a little bit.
A lot of times couples go into marriage with really high expectations, and they get disappointed sometimes when the reality is not equal to what they thought it was going to be. And then that sometimes leads to anger and disappointment in the other person, then leading to conflict or avoidance. And I mean, the research that's out there by someone named Gottman, who's really big in the field, he does a lot of research, and he says that when he meets a couple, he gets them to sit in a room and argue about something. And he can predict with a very high level of certainty who's going to then divorce from that brief interaction based on their communication style. So, I mean, he identifies specific patterns of negative communication and, kind of obvious things like blaming and just really, but the main piece of it is difficulty resolving conflict in a productive way. Basically, there will always be conflict in couples, but it's kind of how they can process it, talk about it, and move forward that kind of predicts who will stay together and who won't. And then aside from just that huge umbrella of communication, are stressors, like if there's the death of a child or something. That's a huge one that leads to intense stress on the marriage. Even having a child born with problems, physical or mental, and other things like that cause stress on the marriage. And, it's a question of whether the marriage can survive that.
Spending time apart is a key aspect of preventing divorce. Although it is counterintuitive, many couples make the mistake of thinking that the true sign of a happy couple is wanting to do every last thing together. Wrong. Yes, it's important to have a lot of overlapping interests, but everyone needs their own private space. This alone time can allow each person to reflect on the relationship without the influence of the other person. It also allows for couples to prevent conflicts by having time to think about the other person's point of view. Then, compromises will not be as hard to make.
When someone brings up something and then the other person, I think it's called like throwing in the kitchen sink or something, like they bring in all the things over the years, that have been problematic about the other person.
Discussing only the topic at hand can help prevent the conflict from escalating. Bringing in other problems to a conflict can create anger, frustration, and stress, which only fuels the fire of arguments. Keeping arguments to a minimum is essential for keeping a positive vibe between couples. Research shows that the main determinants of happy, sustained marriages are actually small, tangible things, like having at least 5 positive interactions such as touching, smiling, and paying a compliment for every negative one, such as sneering, eye-rolling, and withdrawal. This positive environment will ensure that each person feels appreciated and knows that their partner is there for them.
Consistency and routine can go a long way toward providing comfort and familiarity. This includes mealtimes, house rules about behavior, and discipline. Whenever possible, work with the other partner to maintain these rules. Even when you can't enforce them in your ex-partner's home, you can stick to them in yours. Routines help kids to keep a positive mindset. They give their lives purpose and re-encourage the fact that everything does not have to change. The only varying factor is that their parents are no longer romantically involved. Both parents need to establish a prominent role in their children's lives. Each parent is crucial to the child's development. Parental attention helps children to feel just as wanted and loved as they did before the divorce. Parents need to focus on kids when with them and drop all distractions. Yet they must also let children lead their busy lives. Many psychologists conclude that children whose parents divorce must go from living in one world that seems safe to going back and forth between two that often feel like polar opposites. The kids then feel like they must do what their parents have always done for them, develop a clear view of what to think, what to believe, and how to behave, especially in the moral and spiritual realms. To make this easier for kids, parents must not harm the relationship of the child and the other adult. Creating an open environment is crucial to helping kids cope. When kids feel comfortable expressing their feelings, they will share their needs and desires. This will help better the relationship between parent and child. Not only does talking confront problems before they surface, but it prevents kids from acting out in negative ways. Sometimes stress comes out in other ways, at school, or with friends, or in changes in their appetite, behavior, or sleep patterns. Children of divorce are also prone to have poor social skills and struggle with the 5 Ds: depression, drugs, drinking, discipline, and delinquency. Talking can help channel these emotions productively and reminds the kids that what happened between the mom and the dad is not their fault.
But there are kind of initial effects of poorer academic performance, internal and externalizing problems, internal being like depression, anxiety, externalizing being like acting out, aggressive behavior, those types of things. And I think there's just so much that kids are dealing with here. They're dealing with loss potential, like not as much exposure to both parents. They're dealing with a lot of changes in the environment potentially, like school, financial changes, and they have different ways of coping with it, so that's kind of where age comes in. So it's, from what I read, effects of age are unclear, but we know that there's different levels of cognitive development among the ages, and kind of that affects how they understand divorce. So preschool age kids are very egocentric in their thinking. Everything is kind of, anything that happens in their world is because of them. So that applies to divorce. So a lot of times, like preschool, younger kids feel guilt, like they caused the divorce. When of course that's not true, but that's where they go with it. School age kids often, they have a hard time with it, but they don't go there with it as much. But there's a lot of mediating factors. So a big one being the parental behavior. And as an aside, I was reading that being in a high conflict situation with both parents married is more negative, has more negative effects than being in a stable divorced situation.
See a therapist. They are known to help couples solve problems and to help them apply these prevention methods, thus resulting in a reduced chance of divorce. Although therapists do not always fix troubled marriages, they can only help. When couples can't communicate their problems to each other, Therapists act as a mediator between the two.
Not only can they touch on the prevention side of divorce, but they can also help with the children having trouble coping with divorce.